everyone, it's Zeros with the arcade stick, and if you're a fan of the channel, you know I've reviewed some SGF products. They're 3D printed flat boxes, and some of them have pretty unique features. I really like them. And another company sent us over a flat box design of their own, and it's the Tbox Freedom. So as you can tell, yeah, we got 2 extra fun buttons on the bottom, and I'm always for more buttons. But how well does this perform? And did you know, if you need something smaller, you can actually unbolt this guy and make it this size? So that's a really cool feature, and I'll be demonstrating how to change it and what it looks like when it's changed. So if you need something just a little bit smaller, well, you can do that. Anyhow, as usual, I'll be going over an overview, some internals, some lab time, pros, cons, and finally, is this the 3D printed flat box for you? Time to find out. Let's get into the overview for the Tbox Freedom. And yes, again, a 3D printed box that is really small, very lightweight, so it's very portable. And my review kit actually came with not only the controller here, but also a replacement shell. So you can make this even smaller if you need to. All right, so there's that. Now, you can get the case and buttons done in a variety of colors, of course. There are over 30 colors available on the Tbox Etsy page alone. And I also received some extra buttons. So in case I break some of the tabs, which I'm liable to do, here we go. There's also some additional little rubber feet. So there's that. Gotta have more stickers because stickers reduce reaction time. And they're nice enough to include an extra red Pro switch. These are V1s. And also there is an instructional card here. So it does have some handy shortcuts. This is not a sticker though, so I mean you can keep it in your wallet if you really need to look up those shortcuts for what does what. So that's basically what was included. And let's get into an overview, just tour around a little bit more. Now that the accessories are out of the way, let's talk about the Tbox Freedom itself. And yeah, it's a pretty standard 3D printed flat box reference design. However, it is using the Flatbox 5B, which means you have these 2 extra buttons down here. And I'm kind of wishing I got a different color, but I guess I can order some later if I want. Anyhow, the extra buttons here get taken away from the option tabs up here. So you have L3 and R3 ready to go. You can map those to whatever suits your fancy in most modern fighting games. So again, Street Fighter 6, Drive Impact, or Parry, Guilty Gear, map it to faultless defense or instant dash. There you go. Anyhow, you do have 4 option buttons as a result. No turbo, no function, anything like that. That's fine. And then around the sides is really nothing other than your USB-C connection. And on the bottom, and I'll be showing you how to change the shells, like I mentioned. You do have just this guy integrated into the larger mega shell, I guess. And it's just screwed in. There are some screw receivers on the inside, and then there's the PCB on there. So really pretty easy design there. Just print up your flat box and insert the board, and there you go. So we're going to be getting into the dimensions and internals. Let's take some measurements of the Tbox with it in its large shell, and then we'll go back to its small shell and get other measurements. Lengthwise, this is about just shy of 9.5 inches or 240 millimeters. And vertically, we're looking at about 5 3/4 inches and about 150 millimeters. And thickness-wise, let's try and measure this without button. We're looking at 11.22 millimeters or 0.4420 inches. With button, we're measuring at just shy of 0.6 inches, I'd say, or 15 millimeters and change. All right, let's get some measurements on the Tbox Freedom in the tiny shell that they sent me. So this is what it defaulted to. I prefer the larger shell just for comfort, but when you're on the go, this might be the better option for you. Anyhow, across we're looking at 8.5 inches, or just over 215 millimeters. And vertically we are at 4.75 inches or so, and I'd say 122 millimeters. As far as thickness, well, it's pretty much the same thickness as with the other shell on, so that's not really going to change. Let's get a weight while it's in the large case. And it's very light, 9.9 ounces. Did not expect much more. So yeah, if you like a lighter weight controller, you want something you just carry around all day and not really even notice it, then 3D prints are great for that. Let's check out the weight of the Tbox while we're in the smaller shell here. So I'm just going to plump that down the scale. And yeah, it is slightly less at 8.4 ounces. The numbers are interesting, but they don't give you, kind of a feel of how actually big these things are. So just for real comparison, here's a Altoid Stin, for example. And here's a G16. So you can see it's a little bit bigger if you're familiar with that controller. I do have to swap these because it's a little bit bigger. This is the 42 M16. It's slightly bigger vertically, but they're about the same size horizontally. So there's that. Just to give you an idea of some comparisons. I'm going to show the process of how to change the shell on this. Just you can go back and forth between the large and the small one. I do recommend you have something to store your screws in. You can use a cup or a dish or something like that, just somewhere to keep it that's going to be safe. If you have a magnetized one, that's even better because those will keep that in line. And I'm using a Phillips 0, but you can use a Phillips 1 on here. They'll probably be slightly better. Just a tool that'll undo these screws in the back. So let's flip it over, and I've started them already just so we can save some time. But all you do is just lefty-loosey on here. Okay, that should be enough. That should be enough for you. Okay. Ignore my Butterfingers. At this point, they're pretty much all coming loose, so let's just lift this up, and I can dump the screws if I want, but no real need. Now this will give you access to the board and the top. Now, we don't need the top, so you can set that aside. And what we want to do is take the large shell, or the small shell if you're changing to that, and let's put our board in and line up the screw holes. And just be careful. There we go. So I'm holding it up just a little bit so you can see that it settles and those are lined up. Now if you took the screws out, obviously that's fine, but I'm just going to do that. Kind of line them up, and I'm using my rotary, so I'm going to flip it. I'm going to start, I would start in one corner or another, and then move down to the opposite corner. So let's make sure this is settling in. And all the buttons are there. Just make sure all the it's going through. And if any of these are loose, probably the better approach is to actually remove the screws. But here we are. There we go. Just kind of get them lined up. So, and if you feel like it's resisting, don't go through with it, because that can cause threaded screws. You don't want that. So I'm going to kind of wiggle that a bit, then turn it back to drive mode, and there we go. So then I'll start over here. I may need to loosen it first, and that's fine. Again, if you don't leave the screws in like I did, you can just place them in one at a time. Okay, change back to drive mode. Okay, and then let's tackle over here. Same idea. Let's get it to loosen a bit, and then if you don't have a rotary, that's fine. It'll work all the same. So then we can do the center ones. And this should start to get flush as you get it in. And again, if you feel it resisting, you don't want to keep going because that'll start cross-threading, and that's not a good thing. You'll ruin that socket. All right, so now we've got that there, and now we have our bigger shell in place. We're ready to play. All right, let's open this up, and I already showed you how to change shells, but let's look at the board and such itself. I've already moved the screws, so let's just see if we can ply it out. There we go. So as you can see, it's a reference Flatbox B design with these 2 extra buttons here. Really not too much more to it. So on the back we see there's our quick change sockets. These been kind of manually soldered in, which is fine. It's all good. Ours are RP2040 chip and board. That's been connected to the rest of the PCB here. Now, of course, we don't have these socketed because, well, they're down here, but presumably you could. Problem is, if you had them up here and they were, L3 or R3, then you wouldn't be CPT legal. So we're kind of maintaining that in this build, which is fine. Otherwise, you have these. Hopefully I don't step. Okay. I think these are Red Pro switches, which is really nice. However, any of the Chalk V1 switches should work here. So if I want to change them out for some clicky ones, I could do that. All right. Otherwise, if we want to get access to there's our boot cell, here's our reset. So if firmware updating doesn't go well and you have to manually get into boot cell mode, you'll have to obviously open it up and hold this while you connect, and it should be fine. All right. So there's a look at the internals. Let's move on.
Tired of your bare and boring fight stick? Want a look that sets your controller apart? Need an artist to help make that happen? If you want to rep your favorite characters or games on your stick, we can help. From collage style to full custom art, the Arcade Stick has you covered with options at several price points to help make your custom fight stick dream a reality. To learn more, head on over to thearcadestick.com.
Welcome to the lab. So we're going to get things started with my usual slide and pressure testing. So I just want to see how this reacts to being pressed down on, see if it bends or even breaks. And then, yeah, it's holding up pretty well, so that's good. And let's do some slide testing on the foam first. So it does a pretty good job of resisting, so it's not bad. Let's try it on the raw desktop here. And yeah, it's doing an okay job. I think grip tape would be better, but as it is, it's not horrible. All right, so let's move on to some noise and button mashing tests. Next up, I'm just going to do some untreated audio so you can hear how these switches and buttons sound. New for 2025 is I want to do input lag testing. I've been wanting to do this for a while, and finally I can do it thanks to a project called GPDL. And it's just installing some firmware on Arduino Nano, building a cable, plugging that into the board itself or to whatever contacts, and you run a tester. So here's the results for the Tbox Freedom. Of course, we're doing it over cable. It's X input mode. The minimum latency, 1.14, really fast. That's in milliseconds. And then the average 1.42 milliseconds, maximum it saw was 2.78 milliseconds. I can't get a polling rate because that requires an analog stick to test with, so that's not going to show up. Jitter's pretty low. OS, of course, Windows 11 is what I'm testing it on, and it's the latest firmware. So you can see that it performs really, really well. This is extremely fast. Okay, let's do some quick in-game footage with the Tbox. Now, movement, all feels fine. It's quick, it's snappy, it's responsive. So just doing some basic attacks. All right, let's do some fireballs. So all good. Reverse fireball, crack shoot, and so I can do those pretty well to that direction, but if I change up, this is where I just get conscious of it because my two fingers here don't feel as strong. But as you can see, I'm pulling off relatively consistently until, of course, I speak, and then it doesn't happen. All right, there we go. Let's see, as far as double quarter circles, there's that. So, it does come out reasonably well in Street Fighter 6 here. I don't have a problem there. Things I've just observed, you will notice the matte texture of the buttons. It's not gritty or anything, but it's definitely not smooth. So if you like that feel, then it works. If you are looking for something a lot smoother, this really isn't it. I imagine you could retrofit this with Chalk V2 switches and then use the Saitong smooth caps if you really want to. But I feel like that kind of defeats the point, really. As far as slides, it does feel like it snags a little there. So if you need that motion, it's doable, and also you kind of catch these in the act without more practice on my end, I guess. So it's not the smoothest slide, but it's possible. Other things I've noticed is just my hands tend to drop off the edge here because it's not quite big enough. Especially on the small shell, you'd probably be playing like this. I'm standing right now, so that explains a lot of that. It's not something that's uncomfortable, it's just something I've noticed that during gameplay, if I'm playing on the table, then it just starts coming off and my fingers are a little stretched, but it's not painful, it's not annoying, it's not hurting my performance, it's just that. As far as the extra buttons, again, I can't really demonstrate them too well here, but this one's fairly easy to reach with your thumb, so you can have that ready to go. But coming over here just feels a little bit weird because I feel like you have to squeeze your thumb a little bit and curve it more than I want to press a button. So you almost have to do, or just move the whole hand, which might be a little bit slower. I'm not sure if the solution would be put it over here, like some of the OAT42 and Cosmox models do, so you can just do this. But that makes you take your finger off jump, so it's a trade. Those are the big things I've noticed in game with the Tbox. So let's move on. Next up, let's do a quick Steam Deck check with the Tbox Freedom, and I'm going to start with the large shell. And this is a setup that's designed for, if you have a really tight space, playing on an airline or just whatever really small environment you may need to play in, what's the minimal size you're going to need. Also, just to see if the controller works, and being GP2040, yes it does. I do recommend you set it into X input mode. D input mode should also work, but just to show you, yeah, I can move around and I can do things. So there is that. Now, as far as how much width you're going to need, that's more limited by the Steam Deck, as you can see, and that's about 11.5 inches or 290 millimeters. Now, depth-wise, with the large shell, you need about 9.5-ish inches or 240 millimeters. Now, with the small shell, this you really shave off about an inch, or so you get 8.5 or about 215 millimeters. Otherwise, yep, it works, and it's a pretty nice compact fit. Do a quick web review for the Tbox Freedom. And I want to see if we get something that turns up preferably in the first page, and this is on a private tab, so hopefully it doesn't have any history. Unfortunately, I'm just not seeing it. So let's see if we can find it another way. Okay, by doing some Google Foo, I did come across their Etsy page, and then I went over to their Tbox shop page. So the Freedom is just listed under basically leverless controller now as of this recording. If you go to 14 button L3R3, that's basically what you're getting. All right, so then you can configure your Red Pro. This is a product page, of course. And then case color, directional, etc., etc. And then you can add to the cart. So anything offensive here? Not really. I mean, it is saying PS4. Most every GP2040 place says this, and I kind of wish they put an asterisk that says you need either the key files, which is the Forbidden Jutsu method, or you need the dongle to add on to it. So anyhow, if I keep troubleshooting, I like to check that. We have some orders. Okay, that's good. This I do like just because we have some... Okay, how do I change the SOCD mode? I know this is printed with a controller, but and also directional modes, that's good. I mean, the standard GP2040 shortcuts, but it is good to have something handy. Okay, and just some... Okay, good. And yeah, here we go. So here's some notes on the PS4. That's good too. One of the buttons broke. Oh no, that's not good. Oh, this is actually really instructional since these are 3D printed. You know, if I'm pulling out a button and it snaps inside the Chalk V1, which I have had happen to elsewhere, it's very painful. Trying to extract it, I tried drilling, so I may have to try this method out. Anyhow, yeah, I think what I'm seeing is pretty good. I'm not, super offended or anything. Now that we're back from the lab, let's go into pros and cons, what I liked, what we can improve upon, etc. And I'm going to split this up, as usual, into different focus areas, starting with build and build quality. Now the first thing I want to mention is kind of a mid. It's not really a pro or con. It really depends on you and what switches you like. So down here, I mentioned it before, of course, it does use the Chalk V1, and that means you have these tab keycaps. Now, I'm more in favor of the V2 switches by now. There's more options, at least better quality options in the low free, and now Kale has their own line, and I think there's a few others even. So the nice thing with the V2s is you can use the OC Punk, or as I call them, the stovetop caps, or even now the Oat 42 caps, which I think just feel nicer generally, and I don't worry when and if I need to change a switch that I'll break tabs on these. However, I know a lot of players swear by the V1s. They like the wider surface area on them, so it is kind of a preference thing. I'm more biased towards V2s, but if you like V1s, here they are. Next up in build and build quality, yes, it's a 3D print, and I feel like the quality of the print is good. Maybe not quite the level of, say, SGF, but I didn't find it obnoxious or low quality. It's pretty good. Things I'd like about this right now is, and I'll talk about this with the dual shell, how these are actually bolted in, and there's hard insert points, not just screwing into the plastic, and these are actually countersunk, so you're not going to feel them on your lap during play. Just a very nice touch. I kind of wish these tabs were, like little inset buttons as on the Faust and etc. like with the SGF. The tab design is almost kind of a reference design. It works fine, but I just like the little nub buttons, I guess. I don't know. Otherwise, yeah, things are pretty good. They do warn you not to leave this in a hot car or other hot area because it can warp. I think that's going to affect pretty much any 3D print if they get hot enough. I mean, you lay down the plastic by heating it up, and if you heat it up again, obviously you can, deform it, warp it, break it, and it's no fun for anybody. One of the other things in build and build quality, and this could be considered a feature as well, is the dual shell design. I've gone over it, but if you need to switch to something that's really ultra portable, really ultra small, then you have the small shell to go with it. So that's a really nice feature that is not in other flat boxes that I've seen. So that is a nice touch. So the Freedom is not the only unit that Tbox makes. They also have the Exia and a couple others. And so if you're not a fan of the layout here, you like a regular hitbox, no fancy extra buttons down here, I believe they have that. If you like the 6G AWD format, they have that in the Exia. So check that out. I think the only major issue I have with the Freedom is I've noticed when I'm in the large shell and connected here, of course, I was playing in an online tournament and I disconnected. Once I will get it back on, it was fine, but yeah, and this could be my cable. It's a kind of a fat guy, so it doesn't necessarily wedge in there as well. It could be I just need to use a different cable to make this work better. So that is just my experience. If you're going to be playing with this guy, I would definitely recommend you have a thinner end for your USB connection. Now that I'm done with build and build quality, let's move into features and performance. And the first thing I'm going to mention is, the firmware we're using right now is, of course, GP2040CE. And I've reviewed a lot of the products that use this. It's a open source project, so very accessible, very low cost, and it works here, of course, just fine. All the features you love about GP2040 are here. The speed, the compatibility, and of course, if you need to connect to a PS4, PS5, what have you, you can do that just through a Wingman FGC or something like that. All right, what about the other features present on the Freedom? Well, pretty much it's these. That's it. The L3 and R3 here being just repositioned so you can access them with a thumb, map that drive impact, map that parry, whatever you want. It goes there, and you have an extra couple of buttons that you can use, right? I'd say I think it's going to take me a little while to get used to those. And sure, any kind of button move takes a little bit of mental retraining, of course, just like when you learn leverless. And the nice thing about it is because they're not here as well, this guy should be tournament legal even with CPT. So if L3 and R3 were replicated up top, then we'd have a problem. But they're not, so you can use this at pretty much any tournament, which is nice. Other than the features I've mentioned, it's pretty much what you see is what you get. Dual shell design, you have the extra L3, R3 down here, you're fully tournament legal, etc., etc. So for the price, I'll talk about in value, you're getting a pretty good controller. However, if there's going to be a Pro plus extra whatever super turbo version, I would add definitely the pass-through port, so I can plug in my little adapter, and now I have PS5 compatibility. I would maybe add LEDs just because they're fun, and GP2040 supports them so well. I don't know about integrating a screen, a little status screen that I've gotten so spoiled on, but hey, it's a wish list item, let's throw it in there, right? So those are a few things I would say maybe we consider in the future for features. Let's move on to customization, and yes, like a lot of 3D printed controllers, you have a lot of color selection. Tbox has over 30 colors to pick from, and you can choose a color for your body, as well as up to 4 colors for your buttons. And if you need other colors, they do have those separately, I believe, so you can get that done. Let's say I want to, like gray, maybe do a PlayStation 2 setup or something like that, where it's a black body and gray here, blah, 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 and keep going. I could probably do that, but I might have to pay a little extra. So that's, still pretty good. And just like other 3D printed controllers, or at least most of them, you can't get, a design baked into it. I know some folks are starting to do that. So really that makes your customization options either vinyl, cut vinyl, or stickers. let's go into portability and size. And, well, this guy cheats a little bit because dual shell design, right? Well, obviously, with the small shell, you get all the portability you want. This is about as small as I'd be willing to go. And the larger shell enables you to play this a little bit better on the lap. However, I almost wish the large shell was a little bit larger. I don't know I have an exact figure, but just something that would fit on my lap a bit better. I didn't find it was totally lap uncomfortable, but after being spoiled by, say, the T16, by Cosmox, I just like having something a little bit bigger. So maybe even having the option of a third, even larger shell might be nice. Just a future hint. Next up, want to have a little area on documentation, and I mean, it's not bad, but it's just when I go web searching for specifically the Tbox Freedom, it does seem to not be in the results area I would like. However, it's pretty forgivable. I mean, there's not a whole lot here, and most of what you'd want is on the GP2040 website anyway. So, is it forgivable? Sure. However, just getting that search engine optimization or whatnot going would help this a lot. Let's wrap things up with a discussion on value, and once again, I kind of evaluate, the build quality, the features, etc., to the price, right? So does it have a nice ratio? And I'd say around the $60 to $70 range, yeah, it's okay. I mean, around this price range, you're shopping 3D printed or acrylic sandwich models, and really it's just, do you want something super lightweight? You have the dual shell design. You have extra caps. At least that's what came with mine. Maybe that is the feature set you want, right? So in that case, I would say, yeah, sure, the value is pretty decent. I don't think it's super great, but it's decent, right? So yeah, overall value, pretty good. So in the end, is the Tbox Freedom worth your time, your consideration, and your money? Now, I feel like the controller does what it does. It does it fairly well. The gimmick of the small shell and large shell, I think that's a good idea. I mean, that's something innovative in the Flatbox space, so that's nice. I'd like an even bigger shell for even better lap playability. That'd be nice. And the range of colors you have available to do your controller your way is pretty good too. I mean, there's over 20. But it just feels like I'm missing the pass-through port in a lot of other features. Now, I understand you got to balance price and feature set, so there is that consideration, but I feel like not having the pass-through port, that's a big thing, especially for you PlayStation 4 and 5 users out there. It's without that, yeah, you can use the Wingman FGC, but I feel like that's not the best solution when you have the pass-through option in GP2040. You just plug in, say, the Booter 5 or the Magic Boots, and there you go. You set the right mode when you plug in, and you're off to the races. So, I kind of wish that was present here. It is present in other Tbox models, so you can take a look at those. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, again, it's doing what it does, and I do kind of wish we were using Chalk V2s, because I like the switches available there a lot better, just the palm-based ones, like the Low Freeze Shadow series and the Kale Element series. Those just feel a lot nicer to me, but, that's a taste thing. Anyhow, that's how I feel about the Tbox Freedom, and I'll see you next time. Hey everyone, it's that time again. I've got a kitty, and that means it's time to pay the YouTube reverse cat tax. That means we want all your likes, your comments, and subscriptions, of course. So, if you found this content informative, interesting, helped you make a buying decision, helped you learn something or do something, or you just like Sammy here, hey, please leave that like right now. Next up, if you have questions or you're not sure about something, or you just like there's a really great part of the video you just want to tell us all about, or there's something you want to see in the future, leave those comments down below. I try to answer them usually within a week or so. And finally, if you want to see more content from me, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe, hit that bell button. You've all heard content creators say this. I'm just doing it because I've got a kitty and that's going to make you want to do it more, right? Anyway, Sammy says bye, right? Bye. And see you in the next video.
The arcade stick.